As is our custom, I invite you to stand for the reading of the gospel. As you're able, please stand. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after he said this to him, he said, "Follow me." Praise God for the hearing of these sacred words. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Hopefully you've met someone or you know someone who radiates joy. These people have a deep and abiding sense of purpose, and from that deep and abiding sense of purpose, they exhibit a sense of deep compassion and also satisfaction with the way that they live their lives. You might have met these people at a community of faith. You might have met someone with a sense of joy at a city event, or you might have met them through the city that you live in, or you might even have found someone with this sense of joy in your family. These people, to be sure, it's not necessarily that their lives are easy. People with joy, they have problems just like everyone else. They have stress like everyone else, and they have anxiety and fear in their life just like everyone else. But they've found a sense of joy because they've found a sense of purpose, and they're willing and able to live in this purpose no matter what. Author David Brooks, I think, paints a very compelling picture about how we might find joy. He compared our lives to, it's kind of like climbing two mountains. In our life quest for joy, on the first mountain, our lives are typically defined by what we get. You think about it, he's probably right, really. As we begin to grow up into this world, we think about our lives in terms of getting. We get an education. We get a job. We get a family. We get success. And as we climb up this mountain, this first mountain he describes as getting, one of the things that ultimately happens is finally we get to the peak. And we look around and we scan the landscape of our very lives, and we begin to ask the question, is there anything more than this? I mean, I've gotten everything they told me to get. Why am I not satisfied? Is there anything more than this? At which point, when we reach the peak of that first mountain, we're at a crossroads. We can go two different directions. We have a choice. The first choice is we could roll back down that mountain and then resume the game of trying to get whatever it is that we think we need. We go back to getting the career. We go back to getting the life. We go back to getting the house. We roll back down the hill and we try over again. Get more of it. That becomes the answer. Or some people, though rare it may be, some people, they, instead of going backwards down the hill, they fall forwards into the valley ahead of it. And as they fall forward in the valley ahead of that first mountain, they begin to look up, and there's a second mountain they begin to go up. And Brooks says that second mountain, it's not about getting. That second mountain becomes about giving. And they take all the lessons they've learned, the talents they've honed, and the things that they've been given in that first mountain, and they begin to use them in a different way. Instead of living life about getting things, They seek to give themselves away for the well-being of others and the well-being of their community. People on that second mountain are on the road to joy. And over the course of the history of the world, there's some people that's really got to this place. I'll throw out a couple examples. Mother Teresa comes to mind, right? She left a life of ease. Why? Because she felt compelled to give her life away to the folks in Calcutta. John Wesley, big name in the life of the mess of this world. Early on in his life, he was quite passionate about his religion, enthusiastic about his religion. I mean, they called us Methodists because they were so methodical in the way that they embodied their religion. Passionate. As an old man, though, he went through a transformation, and that passion for religion became compassion for people. Abraham Heschel. That might be a name that you've never heard before, but he was a rabbi in the 1960s. I love this quote from Heschel. He says, "As a young man, I looked up to people who were clever, and I looked up to people who were smart, and I looked up to people who could articulate important and sophisticated things. I looked up to people like that. But now as an old man, I look up to people who are kind." Peter, he got it too. Peter might be the one disciple that we resonate with the most. Why? Because we can see ourselves in Peter's shoes. He's always the first name mentioned in the list of the disciples. He's one of the first people that started to follow Jesus. And the truth be told, Peter always had mixed emotions when it came to why he followed Jesus. And truth be told, I think part of the reason why Peter followed Jesus in the beginning was because he wanted to get something in return. A couple of moments in Peter's life really reflects this. One of the big ones being when Jesus predicted he was going to go to the cross, Peter tried to talk him out of it. And Jesus rebuked him in the most stern way possible. Jesus says to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." That's like the only time that he uses the word Satan in all the Gospels. This moment, Peter's trying to talk Jesus out of going, talk him out of going to the cross. And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan," Peter, because your mind is on earthly things. It's not on godly things. And finally, things come to a head when Jesus is executed. Peter famously denies Jesus 3 times. It seems when we follow Jesus because of something we get, when it becomes inconvenient, we walk away. It's in this moment that we just heard and read. This is Peter's conversion. I mean, he'd followed Jesus for a long time, but he never really was converted because he was all about getting up to this point. And it's in this moment in John chapter 21 that Jesus catches up to Peter and he says, "Do you love me? I mean, really love me?" And Peter, of course, says, "Yeah, Lord, I love you." And Jesus responds, "Then feed my sheep. If you really care, then give your life away. Give your life away the way I gave my life away." And then comes the line, "Peter, when you were young, you got to go anywhere you wanted. You got to do anything you wanted to do. When you were young, you got to do it all Peter's way. But when you're older, you're going to have to be led away to places you soon not go." And Jesus said this to him in order to indicate the kind of death that Peter would have to die in order to glorify God. And I think there's something in that for us too. There's a death that we have to die if we're going to glorify God. And the death I think that we have to die is, well, we have to die to the first mountain, where everything's defined by our getting. We got to wake up to the second one, like Peter did. and seek to give ourselves away. Because, folks, truth be told, that's where joy is really found. We want to be happy, we say. And truth be told, happiness is all about getting what we want. And joy is different. Joy is about giving ourselves away and finding fulfillment, like Peter did and like all the great saints of the church did. I can think of a few people in my life that exhibit this kind of giving fairly well. And I typically ask permission to talk about people in the church before I do it, but these people probably wouldn't let me talk about them, so I'm going to talk about them now anyway to get away with it. One of my people I think about is my friend Laura. Her superpower is hospitality. She welcomes everybody. She's like the greatest evangelist from Methodist Temple, if you know Laura. That's her superpower. That's how she gives. I think of my friend Dawn and Amanda. Their superpower is music. If you know them very well, they're not just playing music on Sunday morning, they're always playing music. During the week, everywhere they go, it's about music, music, music. It's how they give themselves away. I think of my friend Eric, who's usher here almost every Sunday. He's solid, and he's here. And he exudes a sense of loyalty and faithfulness that, to be honest, inspires, well, all of us. Each one of them has their own unique personalities, has their own unique talents, but they exude a sense of joy. And why? Because they figured out a way to harness them so they could give themselves away to a community. This past week, the place I experienced joy the most was, well, I was signed up for a race on Friday night. My wife, Volin, told me I was going to run in this race. That's how it went down. So don't think it was some big holy motivation that got me signed up for this race. Leslie, that's the motivation. That's how this happened. My wife, my wonderful, beautiful wife, Leslie, told me I was going to do it. And so the race, though, was at Harrison High School, and it was a group of third grade girls that were going to be running a 5K race, and they needed running buddies to run the race. Now, if you know me very well, you know that I like to run. It's something I've done from the beginning. Since I've been here, I try to run at least 3 days a week. I really like it. It makes me happy. And why does it make me happy? Because I get to feel good. And I like to run because it helps me clear my mind, that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, Leslie says, you like to run, and they need running buddies, so you're going to go run. And so I went and ran. I signed up. And I got there at 6 o'clock on a Friday night, and I was introduced to my running buddy, a third grade girl by the name of Valeria. It was an awkward moment when we first met. I mean, it's nothing like a middle-aged white guy that's going to be running with you around the track, right? And she's like, woo. and she went and ran and went back with her friends and delayed having to hang out with me until right before the race began. And so finally the race began, and we began to run together. And Valeria and I started to get to know each other. She told me how she's the only girl in her family. She has 2 brothers. She told me how she doesn't like watching TV, but she likes to read books about dragons. She told me how, after we took a couple laps, how she was glad that I was running with her because, well, if it was someone in her family, she said, they probably wouldn't have made it around the track one time. And after the race was over, we got across the finish line, and Valeria went off and she went and celebrated with her friends. Then Valeria went off and she went and celebrated with her family. And I was just about ready to get my stuff together and go home. And then she came up and she stood beside me. And I did the guy side hug, and we took a picture together. As I drove home that day, or that evening, I wasn't feeling happiness. I was feeling joy. Why? Because I took something I loved, and I was able to use it to contribute to the life of another. And that's how it works. Life after Easter How do we keep it going? And that's a question that we should all wrestle with and ask. Here's my answer. You take the things that you love the most, and you're happy about doing, and you try to harness them in such a way that you contribute to the world around you. And that's where you find joy. Frederick Buechner, the great theologian, said it best. Where your greatest joy within you meets the world's greatest need, it is there that God is calling. It is there that Christ is sending. And so my challenge and my hope for you on this day is you to be courageous enough to listen to the voice of your heart that's calling you to give yourself away. It's only then that you'll find what you're looking for. Amen.